This is the Porsche Design Tower, the most expensive address on Florida's coastline. 60 stories, $560 million, a private elevator that carries your car to your bedroom. It's been sinking for 7 years. Nobody was watching. Who approved building a 60-story skyscraper on a barrier island made of sand? And once it opened, was anyone even looking? If the ground beneath a $560 million tower has been shifting for 7 years, why is the first warning coming from a satellite, not a city inspector? And if it can happen to the most expensive address in Florida, what does that mean for every other building on that beach? Sunny Isles Beach sits on a barrier island, a thin strip of sand pushed up by the Atlantic, a few feet above sea level. For most of the 20th century, it held motels. Michael Deser, a real estate developer who started acquiring Sunny Isles beachfront in the 1980s, and his son Gil assembled more than 27 acres of Florida coastline. Gil had one idea: build something the world had never seen. In 2012, he signed a licensing deal with Porsche Design Group, the luxury arm of the German automaker, to put the Porsche name on a residential skyscraper. Not a hotel, not an office tower, a place where people would live permanently with their cars. The signature feature was something Deser invented, patented, and named after himself: the Deser Vader, a full-size glass elevator wide enough for a vehicle that carries a resident and their car from street level to their private sky garage, a glass-enclosed parking space built into the apartment, visible from the bedroom. The elevator rises at 800 feet per minute, under a minute to the top floor. The marketing line was almost honest: sleep with your sports car. It worked. The tower opened in January 2017, and 60 stories, 641 feet, 132 units. Units started at $4.5 million and climbed past $32 million. 22 billionaires bought in. Among them, Lionel Messi, widely considered the greatest soccer player of all time. In 2019, he reportedly paid around $5 million for Unit 4705 on the 47th floor. For someone that recognizable, the building offered something rare: privacy, without passing through a public lobby. Deser described it as a self-contained city, designed so completely, he said that residents would never need to leave. His own social media biography read, "The one who dies with the most toys wins." The building sold out before construction finished. At the groundbreaking in 2013, Gil Deser told the crowd, "We've raised the bar to where it will be unachievable by anyone else." That was the plan. Here's what actually happened. 60 stories, 641 feet, built on sand. Miami sits on the wrong kind of earth. The entire South Florida coastline sits on porous limestone shot through with loose quartz sand. Geologists at the University of Miami call it the structural equivalent of a wet sponge. Sunny Isles Beach is the worst version of this. A barrier island, a thin strip of sand separated from the mainland a few feet above sea level. No bedrock, no solid anchor underneath. Set a 60-story tower on that surface, and the sand does one thing: it slowly compacts under the load. The grains shift to repack, settle tighter, a little at a time, every day for years. Like a dirt road that develops ruts after enough heavy trucks pass over it, the surface did not crack, nothing broke. The road just slowly gave way. Construction next door accelerates the process. Every pile driver, every neighboring tower going up sends vibrations through the ground. Engineers have a name for it: slow settlement. No crack, no sound, no visible moment of failure. Then the satellite data came in. The Deser Vader works exactly as advertised. The car elevator system, 3 separate elevator shafts, each wide enough for a full-size vehicle, functions precisely as Gil Deser designed it. Residents drive in at street level, ride up, and park beside the bedroom. Engineering by every measure delivered. The building itself meets Florida's high-velocity hurricane zone code, the strictest wind load standard in the continental United States. Impact-resistant glass throughout. Structural reinforcement rated for 200-mile-per-hour winds. But the engineering that everyone measured: wind resistance, load capacity. Elevator mechanics assumed one thing: that the ground underneath would eventually stop moving. The University of Miami study did not say the Porsche Design Tower was about to collapse. What it did show was narrower and in some ways more disturbing. Using satellite radar data from 2016 to 2023, researchers identified 35 coastal high-rises from Miami Beach to Sunny Isles Beach, with measurable subsidence, in some cases reaching just over 3 inches. The Porsche Design Tower ranked highest on that list. The danger is not simply that a building moves downward. Heavy buildings can settle. Engineers expect some of that. The concern is whether the movement continues, whether it exceeds projections, and whether every part of the structure moves evenly. That is where differential settlement becomes important. One part of a building can move slightly more than another, creating stress that may not be visible from the street. Senior author Falk Amelung confirmed the tower had not stopped moving. Between 2016 and 2023, it sank more than any of its 34 neighbors. Kobe Karp, a Miami architect whose firm designed several of the buildings named in the study, told NBC6 he felt very comfortable with the structural integrity and the structural systems of the buildings that were mentioned in the report and how they were built. In San Francisco Millennium Tower, a 58-story luxury high-rise was built on soft bay mud without piles reaching bedrock. After opening, it began sinking and leaning. Engineers spent more than $100 million attempting to stabilize it. In Miami, no equivalent requirement exists. Then comes the part no one talks about in the sales brochure. Stand next to a ruler. Find the 3-inch mark. That is the total vertical drop of the most expensive residential tower in Florida over 7 years. Not from an earthquake, not from a storm. From the ground doing what sand does under weight, slowly, silently, without announcement. Picture a dining table with one leg pressing into soft ground. It does not fall. It tilts imperceptibly at first, then enough that a glass slides. Differential settlement does not collapse buildings. It deforms them. Pipes crack inside walls before anyone sees water. Doors drift out of square, not enough to notice on day 1, enough to jam on year 5. The residents paying up to $12,000 a month in HOA fees had no way to know any of this was being measured because it wasn't. And no one was required to look. In December 2025, the Miami Herald pulled engineering reports from dozens of towers along the Sunny Isles coastline. What the investigation found? Buildings were sinking faster than projections had anticipated. Florida law contained no requirement, none for a developer or building owner to monitor settlement after a tower receives its certificate of occupancy. No measurement, no reporting, no threshold that triggers review. When the December 2024 satellite study published, Sunny Isles Beach Mayor Larissa Svachan stated that all required building inspections were current. She was correct. Every inspection the law required had been completed. The law simply did not require anyone to measure whether the ground was moving. A year later, the Miami Herald's own investigation confirmed it. Settlement monitoring was never part of the requirement. The building passed every inspection it was asked to pass. Nobody asked about the ground. Florida's 40-year recertification law, strengthened after the June 2021 collapse of Champlain Tower South in Surfside, a 12-story building 3 miles down the same coastline that killed 98 people, mandates structural inspection 4 decades after a tower opens. The Porsche Design Tower opened in 2017. Its first mandatory recertification is due in 2057. Lead author Farzaneh Aziz Zanjani, a geophysicist at the University of Miami and the scientist who led the 7-year satellite study. The study underscores the need for ongoing monitoring and a deeper understanding of the long-term implications for these structures. No legislature has made that monitoring mandatory. In February 2026, 14 months after the satellite study published, developers building a new tower nearby were required for the first time to monitor ground settlement during construction and for 1 year after completion. 1 year for a building expected to stand a century. And the lack of visibility was not only geological, it was financial. In July 2018, 18 months after the Porsche Design Tower opened, federal prosecutors filed a criminal complaint in the Southern District of Florida. The target, an alleged scheme to launder more than $1 billion embezzled from PDVSA, Venezuela's state-owned oil company, the method shell companies, and Miami real estate. One of the properties named was Unit 2205 at the Porsche Design Tower, a $5.3 million condo. Federal officials alleged it had been transferred as payment for laundering services. They filed to seize it. 4 months later, a second federal indictment named Unit 4406 at the same tower, a $12.8 million penthouse, connected to a different alleged billion-dollar scheme involving a Venezuelan media billionaire. 2 units, 2 separate federal investigations, both in the same building, both in the same year. Desert Development. The builder was not charged. Gil Desert stated his firm operated within the law, but the buyers the tower attracted and the financial opacity that made those purchases possible were on federal record before most residents had finished unpacking. Nobody who sold these units lost $1. Then it gets worse. Sea levels along the Sunny Isles coastline are rising at approximately 2.6 inches per decade, documented by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Over 20 years, that adds 5 inches against a coastline simultaneously pressing downward. The building loses ground from below. The water gains ground from above. Both clocks are running. Nearly 70% of coastal high-rises in Sunny Isles Beach showed measurable sinking, the highest concentration of any area in the study. Sunny Isles Beach is currently projected to experience roughly 100 days of tidal flooding per year within 2 decades, according to climate researchers at Florida International University. The Porsche Design Tower sits at street level on a barrier island. Its lobby is approximately 8 feet above current sea level. The building is going down. The water line is coming up. Aziz Zanjani and her co-authors wrote in their published paper, "There are no indications that subsidence will come to a stop." And all of it traces back to one decision. 7 years, 3 inches. Nobody looked, and it's already happening again right now 1 block north. This was not a building that failed its inspections. It passed everyone. The system worked exactly as designed. It just was not designed to watch the ground. Would you have bought here the car elevator, the sky garage, the privacy, the status if the sales contract disclosed that no one was legally required to measure whether the tower was still moving after closing? 1 block north, Gil Desert, the same developer, is currently building the Bentley residences. 749 feet, 216 units. Prices starting at $5.8 million. Scheduled completion 2028. Foundations extending 200 feet into the same barrier island sand. Construction loan $630 million from Madison Realty Capital, a New York-based real estate finance firm. The average buyer at Bentley Residences will commit up to $37.5 million to a foundation sitting on the same sand, with no legal requirement to measure whether it moves. You just don't know it yet. The developer built what the market rewarded. The city approved what the code allowed. The lawyers structured what the law permitted. There's a version of this story where that is enough. The building stands. No one is in immediate danger. And there is a version where it is not, where comfortable is not the same as measured, where passing inspection is not the same as being watched, where the people who made every decision that brought this building to this ground will not be the ones living above it when the answer arrives. Nobody who approved this is being asked to justify it. The only people without an exit are the ones who signed at closing. The project you just watched took years to fail publicly. The next one on this channel took longer and cost more. Subscribe because by the time it makes the news, it's already too late. Comments are open. Name your city.